Hi, everybody. So I am here today with Dr. Rachel Rubin, the founder of Spark Admissions. And we planned this Facebook Live. We planned it quite a while ago. And so today is a little bit of an unusual day with tremendous turmoil in our country. And we just want to acknowledge that what we're hoping for, and I often feel this way after a crisis, is to go back talking about the regular things. And so we're going to have a conversation about college, and we're very hopeful that this is just going to be a normal conversation that takes place without all the chaos that's going on right now, and that it happens very soon. So, Rachel, thanks so much for being here with us. And as the founder of Spark, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, great. And we're mostly, like, the seniors are mostly done right now, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're talking to parents, hopefully, of juniors and sophomores and juniors. And this is, again, separate from what's going on in the world right now. This is such a weird time because, you just don't know what to do. Like, if you had an older kid, it's not same as that. And if you're doing it for the first time, you really don't know what to do. And one of the things that I always found so interesting, and I myself experienced this, if you have a kid who's a sophomore and you feel like you don't want to touch it yet, you have this panic that you're not touching it yet. And if you're a parent who wants to touch it yet, you have a feeling like maybe I shouldn't be so worried about it yet. So there's really no equation that makes us settled as parents. So what would you suggest in this world of tremendous tension and stress for both parents and kids? How do we reduce that anxiety?
So this is a really great question. Thank you for asking it. I can certainly understand why families are stressed. Beyond kind of the horrific events that took place yesterday at the Capitol, there are so many other reasons. If families are looking at any of the trends that came out of early decision this year, I can certainly understand why their stress is even more heightened. Sort of what happened at top colleges as a result of COVID and for the most recent admission cycle is that more students applied to their dream school than ever before. And applications really surged. And a lot of that is because there's now test optional policies for this year. So students who previously wouldn't have necessarily applied to top colleges because their test scores weren't quite as high as they needed to be, now felt like they could apply. So more students applied, applications soared, which means selectivity increases and admission rates plunge. Especially when colleges don't really increase the number of students that they want to admit early. In addition, virtual recruitment events proved to be highly successful, with top colleges reporting far more engagement with prospective students than ever before. And so as a result of this, MIT received a 62% increase in early applications, while Harvard received a 57% increase. So just sort of hearing those numbers, it sends families' stress levels through the roof. But please remember that these are the extremes. Most schools do not have these numbers. In fact, early in November, the first data released by the Common Application showed that unfortunately, there was actually a 7% decline in the number of low-income students who applied. And there was also a much greater decline in applications at less selective public and private universities. So there's kind of a little bit of a differentiator between the massive increase in the top schools in terms of applications and then a decrease in applications to lower schools. With that said, college admissions is stressful even in normal times. And with the added weight of everything that's going on in the world right now, it's even more so. So my advice is, firstly, I think the most important thing is that students and parents need to stop feeding off of one another's stress. Students are stressed about choosing a college, about paying for college, about going off to college, leaving their friends, and the general work and pressure of school, along with pressures of simply being a teenager today. But they're also really stressed about disappointing their parents. And that's something that I think a lot of parents don't initially realize. When I see students push back or fight about college stuff with their parents, it's really often because they're so worried that they won't live up to their parents' expectations or that their parents will be disappointed in them. And so I think kind of just even keeping that in mind and keeping it in check will be really helpful. We don't want to kind of carry our stress onto our children. That's the last thing they need right now. With that said, this is enormously stressful for us parents as well. So we have to understand that it will be okay. Even if your child doesn't get into their top choice school, their life is not going to actually be worse. Their life might be somewhat different than what we had originally intended, but it doesn't mean it's going to be in any way worse. It could very well be better. We just don't know. We can't predict the future. That's not in kind of our trajectory right now. And so the more the parents can really reassure their kids that they'll be happy at a variety of different colleges and universities, that's going to take stress off of both of them. Not just reassuring your kids that, but also really kind of taking it to heart yourself. Also, I would set aside kind of particular periods of time to talk about college with your kids, but not talk about it all the time, not try to bring it up at dinner every week. That's kind of going to set time that should be a good quality family experience up for, potentially creating some stress. And so I would schedule family activities that don't devolve into obsessing around college. Make sure that you and your teen have something else to talk about.
So one of the things that I've heard is that parents set up a once a week and there's no, like they agree with their kids. There's no talking about college with their kids in between that. And the kids are so relieved, like they feel assaulted. And now they know that it's only going to be a healthy once a week, sit down and discuss it. Is that something that you encourage also?
I absolutely encourage that. And I think it's a place where both people, the parents and the kids can write down kind of their concerns and their thoughts and whatnot, and kind of add on to that list each week. And then when they have that meeting, they can really both share their opinions in what's hopefully a really non-judgmental way that is ultimately talking about what is the best thing for your student, for the child, in terms of fit for college, and also in terms of really reasonable goals and expectations. And ideally, as these discussions continue, there will be a much clearer alignment between the goals of the parents and the goals of the students.
And so that's a nice segue into the question about best fit. You use the language, it's not like this first choice, second choice, but what are the best fit colleges for your kid? How do you define that?
Okay, that's a great question. So I really sincerely believe that what is going to be a great fit for one student might not be a good fit at all for another student. All people are not created equal. All schools are not created equal. There are pluses and minuses for every person, for every college. And so ultimately what you want for your child is to be healthy, to be happy, to be successful, and however you define success. Most of us want our kids to kind of thrive intellectually and to grow, to get a job where they can sustain themselves, but also be happy and feel challenged in the way that's really right for them. And so I spend a lot of time helping my families understand what is the right fit for their child. And I help students also think about that. So when I talk about the best fit college, I really mean academic fit, social fit, cultural fit. Some people care a lot about the religious fit, the strength of a particular major. We think carefully about whether you want a small school or a large school, urban, rural, suburban. Do you want Greek life at your college? What does that mean? How will that impact your social experiences? Is it really important for you to have great research opportunities? Do you want special lab equipment? Would you like small class discussions to get to know your teachers? Are 500 people lectures going to be fine for you? Do you actually want that? Or do you really learn better in kind of small seminar types of classes?
Do kids typically know themselves? Like, the parent might be surprised to find out from their child that they've thought about these things and that they actually prefer one over the other?
So I think that a lot of people haven't thought about it by 10th grade. They don't know what it means to have a lecture style class. They also don't know what it means to be in Greek life and what the pros and cons are. And it's our kind of responsibility to help educate them as much as we can. I think an enormous amount of the stress in the college admissions process is not just around whether you'll get in or not, but it comes from something called information asymmetry, which is actually an economic concept that says people make much more rational decisions if they understand what the pros and cons are and if they have the proper information to make rational decisions. And so part of our role as kind of the grown-ups in our young people's lives is to help them figure out what information they need. A lot of people certainly hire a college admissions consultant like myself to provide that information. But you can also do it on your own as a parent if you're sort of willing and interested in helping students find this fit and go beyond just kind of raw numbers in terms of selectivity. So we can really talk to our young people about, well, what does Greek life actually mean? And describe the pros and cons of it. In terms of lectures versus small group discussions, we can show them videos and talk about how do you best learn from your teachers right now? What really works for you and what doesn't work for you? And what does that mean in terms of what you want in your college experience? So even if people haven't thought about it before, I mean, your children are highly intelligent, thoughtful beings. And if you treat them as such and have these discussions with them, they will absolutely rise to the occasion.
So what would be the top 3 things you would say about best fit? Like if a parent has a parent of a junior right now, and they're just starting to look at colleges and even sophomore, like what are the top 3?
That's a really great question. So in terms of the best fit, I would say I would personally break it down into academic fit, social fit, and maybe cultural fit. So academic fit, some parents and students, well, I should say some students really know already what they want to study. And then ideally they would go to a school that has a lot of resources and opportunities and courses in the area that they want to study. But if they don't know, which is completely fine, the average student changes majors 3 times in college. So even if they think they know, that we want to make sure that they actually do have enough of a range that they could easily change if they choose to do so. So then we really want to think about, well, what options are they considering? What would they want in the academic environment? Again, this goes back to kind of the size of the classes, whatnot. Then I would think really what's going to help them grow socially too with the social emotional learning. Do they want to have a small college community where they can try a variety of different activities and go out for the soccer team, even if they're not going to be, a D-run recruit, or whether they can have Greek life if that's something that they want, whether the social life in the campus is very heavily geared towards partying or more in terms of political engagement or whatever it is. And then cultural fit, we also want to make sure that they feel comfortable, but that ideally they're kind of values and ideologies and whatnot is appropriately pushed to help them just grow as a person intellectually and whatnot. And then some people really have a strong preference towards, being within a certain geographic area relative to their families or relative to the sports that they want.
That could be very far away or very close.
Exactly. Yes. Some people say to me, please, I need to get out of Massachusetts because I'm based in the greater Boston area and I want to learn something totally different. And other people say to me, I absolutely love where I am. I know myself. I want to be close to my family so that I can drive home if I need to. So it's important for me to stay in New England, or maybe I have food allergies and that has to impact where I apply to college. There's a lot of factors and it's simply not the same for every person.
Okay, that's great. So we need to talk to our kids and really trust that they can be part of that conversation. I'm going to show you some of the questions. So Paula wants to know, where do we start? From research at home or by consulting someone like you?
Oh, that's a great question, Paula. So I would say it really depends on your relationship with your child. If it's a really positive relationship right now and you both have a lot of respect and for one another and there's not kind of judgmental tension, then I would definitely try to start on your own to have some of these important conversations. I think it can actually bring families much closer and you can develop increased respect for one another. But it also depends on sort of your comfort level with this material, as well as the time that you have. It takes a considerable amount of time to do this all on your own. And so if you feel like actually this is a way that I could really kind of use my financial resources to help myself and to help my kids by moving this to a third party, then I would say start with a consultant. But it also depends on sort of where your child and you are relative to the college timeline. If you're just starting to have these conversations and your child is a junior and college admissions is really important to you, I would say it might make sense to actually get started with a consultant. At the same time, if you feel like your child is a sophomore and you want to begin work together to build those great relationships and to really understand each other's goals and bring in someone later, then that's a great decision for your family too.
Okay, thank you for Paula. And here is Shar. How do you know if your child is ready to be on their own and go away to college?
That's a great question, Shar. Yeah, and I think that is part of what's different and unique for every one of us and every one of our children. I have 3 children of my own, and I can say that it actually doesn't necessarily relate to their age, but more just in terms of kind of their maturity level and what their style is. And nobody knows your children like you do, right? It's just, ultimately what feels right. And by having those conversations with your child, I think that will become clearer. I would suggest really having a mix of colleges to which you're applying, some that are closer, some that are a little farther, and some that are even farther still. Because I don't know if your child is in 10th grade or 11th grade, but students evolve relatively quickly in the course of their high school career in terms of their maturity and whatnot. And sometimes we even see a shift within a few short months. If something really ignites their passion, then all of a sudden they could be far more kind of capable people or stronger students in a short period of time. And I would hate for us to limit them. So I would say that we want to have a range, but you also want to feel like your kids will be okay without you. It's one of the reasons why we want our students and our children to actually have some of those difficult life experiences, even while they're living with us, so that not everything is brand new when they get to college.
Also, I think, Rachel, that's so true in my house. Like the difference between who they were when we started the process and who they were a year and a half later when they left home, it's almost like having a newborn and a 1.5-year-old. Like the growth was so different. So we're like in a bind, like trying to evaluate a kid right now. So I think your advice is so fantastic to think about who they are today and who they might be. So you have to account for that. Okay, so Lori has a question. Hi, Lori. Lori, her son only applied to one school. He's so committed to that school. What can they do?
So first of all, thank you so much. It's really a privilege for me to be here. I was in the middle of reading the question when it got taken away, so I didn't
Sorry, I'm going to put it back up there. Sorry about that.
Just finish it really quickly. So I think that it's really important to try to complete a few more applications. Really, the final application date for a lot of colleges is January 15th. And there's some colleges that have rolling admission after that. But it does make me very nervous. Thank you, Sue. I finished reading that question, by the way. It makes me a little bit nervous to just apply to one college because, as I sort of mentioned at the beginning of this call, admissions is different this year than ever before. I mean, a lot of things remain consistent. What colleges ultimately want from students is really the same thing that they've always wanted, which I'm happy to talk about. But there's just, for some colleges, there's such an enormous surplus of applications, and for others, there's far fewer. And I can sort of predict which schools are going to have which ones, but most people don't study this for their career, and so it's not necessarily obvious. But I would say that, we just want to make sure that our young people have options. And the last thing I would want is for them not to have any options for next year. So you can even tell them that someone with whom you spoke really suggested applying to, 2 to 3 other schools just to make sure that they can go to college if they want to in the fall, or that your son can.
Okay. So this is a question I always think about. There's so much emphasis on getting your kids involved in extracurriculars and being devoted to something enough that you rise kind of in the leadership position.
Yeah.
And so does every kid applying to college have to be a leader?
That is a really wonderful question. It's a great question. I really appreciate it. I was actually just talking to one of my admissions officer's friends the other day, and he was joking that if we only accepted leaders, all of the clubs on campus would only have one person in them, right? So his larger point was really that while they love to see students be engaged, what matters most is the spirit of collaboration and community, and really of pitching in for the larger whole. I have some students where leadership comes really easily and they want to be the leader of everything, and others who just really don't feel comfortable in that level and would much rather spend their time doing research or kind of helping the homeless or doing a lot of other things. We can't force people to be who they're not. At the same time, colleges really appreciate students who go above and beyond in whatever they care about most. So maybe your child really loves to read and that's their favorite thing. And they're one of those types of people who actually knows a huge amount about a variety of issues. But how do you kind of show that in terms of your resume? Well, I do think colleges in some way want to see that students are passionate about things. So perhaps they could just found a book club where other introverts can get together and talk about literature. Or they can start a book club for the younger generation, for middle schoolers, to help them kind of get really excited about literature. So it's not kind of, and even if they start the book club, there can be somebody else leading it each week. And that really kind of indicates to colleges that you are a proactive person, but you don't necessarily need to be standing there in front of 30 other people as the editor-in-chief or the student body president. What matters is not necessarily your title or that you get to be kind of the boss, but really colleges want to see that you're engaged with your school or local community, that you take responsibility, and that you care about bringing peers together in a collaborative manner. And ideally that you learn something about yourself as a result. So I would say that leadership is important, but it can come in a huge variety of forms. And it certainly does not in any way need to show that you are the leader of 5 different clubs at school. Colleges kind of can see right through that. For some people, that is completely authentic, but it's really, really about being authentic to yourself and developing a story. That is what colleges care about the most, a story about who you are and describing that well in your essays.
One of my kids thought that if there were like 7 lines available, they had to come up with 7 activities. So the creative mind came up with so many things that weren't real. And it's like, there is this kind of predisposition to see 7 lines and think that means 7. Is that in fact true?
It's not. So actually, if you look at a variety of different application portals, yes, the Common Application does have 10 spots for activities, but MIT, I think, has only 5. The Coalition application, the UC application, they all have far fewer. And there's actually a lot of talk that the Common Application will switch to maybe 5 spots for extracurriculars because they don't want students to feel like they have to fill all of them. And also, it's really not even helpful for colleges to see that many. They really want to see where students are spending the vast, vast majority of their time. That's sort of the purpose, because they want to understand what is important to students. And looking at the resume kind of allows them to see, how are you choosing to spend your time? And if you're feeling pressure to add all of these other items, you're actually probably spending less time on what you really want to be doing, which is, if they see what you really want to be doing, that's actually going to give much greater insight into who you are as a person and the extent to which you would be a good fit for that school.
Okay, so tell me how someone can reach out to you. Paula wants to be in touch. I put your website up there, but do you have an email you want to put out to people, or just go to the website?
So the best thing is really just to go to our website. We have a contact us form, but you can also reach me directly at Rubin at sparkadmissions.com. Spark is singular and admissions is plural. Or you can call us via the number on our website, or you can go to contact@sparkadmissions.com.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's, here are the two questions I want to ask. They're both the same question, but one is targeting parents of 10th graders and one is parents of 11th graders. What are the first three things they should be doing after this call to like ease their anxiety and also move things forward for the college admissions process?
Perfect.
Let's start with 10th grade and then do 11th.
Okay. So I would say that the top three things for a 10th grader to really consider are, number one, developing an interest in a particular area. This academic area does not need to be your intended or your planned major when you actually get to college, because as I said, the average person changes majors 3 times, and colleges have no preconceived notion that what students say they're going to major in is what they're actually going to major in. At the same time, they care so much that students do go above and beyond in a particular academic area. So the first thing is I would choose which academic area your child thinks they like the most right now, and try to do a bunch of activities both in the summer and extracurricularly, and also ideally as a volunteer activity around that academic area. That's really going to help build your child's story and allow them to appear kind of unique and really interesting when writing their applications. So 10th grade is the best time to start that. The second thing I would do is find really meaningful extracurricular opportunities. Maybe your child does have 10 different activities right now, but they actually only like 5 of them. Let's just take away the other 5, right? We don't need our young people to be more stressed than they already are, particularly doing things that they don't enjoy just because they think maybe colleges want to see them. A lot of times, colleges don't want to see those activities. Not always. I don't know exactly what they are, but they really want to see what you're most interested in. The biggest caveat to that, however, is they really want to see students that care about the community. So if they're not doing so already, I would really strongly urge you to help your student, your child, get involved with a great community service activity where they can really give back and learn a lot about themselves. And then the third thing I would say is to start to think about what you care about most in terms of leadership. So we're going back to that question again that Sue asked. You do not have to be a leader in everything by any means whatsoever. And even if you are an introvert and prefer being on the sidelines, there are still ways to develop leadership. And I would try to pick, 1 to 3 things where you can really show your passion for that area and demonstrate that you can bring people together collaboratively and that you can show what you've learned by taking on those leadership experiences.
Okay, so let's move into 11th grade. You've got an 11th grader.
All righty. So if you have an 11th grader, I would say in some ways the same thing, but somewhat different. So the first one is to build on that academic narrative that I talked about for 10th grade. If you haven't done that yet or don't have one, let's start it right now and build upon it. And ideally your extracurriculars, your volunteering, and your summer plans would align with it. So that kind of goes into the next thing, which is really to make an amazing summer plan for the summer. For the summer before 12th grade. Colleges love to see what students do the summer before 12th grade because they feel like that is a great opportunity to learn what students care about the most and the way that they might want to spend their time actually in college. So, with kind of online learning and everything being virtual right now, regardless of where you live in the country or even in the world, as long as you have internet access, you can do amazing things. Most of them are completely free, although not all of them, but you could take online college classes. You could reach out to professors to do a research internship. if you have to work over the summer, of course you can do that, but there's still, that shouldn't take all of your time. Ideally, it wouldn't be a full-time job, or if it is, you can still take online classes, even if they're not for credit. You can do really interesting and engaging community service activities. The summer is really important. And then lastly, I would start to do virtual college visits and virtual tours, information sessions, excuse me, talk to students who are at the colleges where you think you might want to apply, and create a really balanced list of schools that you and your child would be really excited for them to attend. I think that having that list by the end of junior year takes an enormous amount of the stress off and really allows your child to be able to work on their applications the summer before senior year, which is what I highly, highly recommend as one of their main activities over the summer, is to do the bulk of their applications during the summer. Because the idea of doing them during the beginning of senior year, when they're also most likely taking their most rigorous college classes, they're in a bunch of extracurricular activities, that's literally a kind of a recipe for stress. And it's an unnecessary recipe. Like, we can take the stress part out of there by doing the bulk of the work over the summer.
So I loved everything you said, because it's in some ways giving us assignments that could create more stress, but in reality, it's like, don't cram for college admissions, right? Like, spread it out, make it when it's not stressful. And these are just really good action items for parents and teens to do right now. So Dr. Rachel Rubin, founder of Sparks Admissions, thank you so much for being here with us. And her contact information is in the comments, but you can also just look up sparkadmissions.com. Thanks so much.